What's up, Ramblers? Your favorite CEO is back. And before we begin today's podcast, make sure you hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode. And follow Assistance HQ and Offsource HQ across all platforms to stay up to date on the latest content, updates, and more. And remember, if you need a virtual assistant, visit us at offsource.tech. Now, before we begin, a word from our sponsor. Hey guys, welcome back to another wonderful episode of The Ramblings. I'm your host, Angelo Roberts, and I have today with us Vicky Woo. She's the owner of Vicky Woo Marketing. She's also worked with multiple Fortune 500 companies as a CMO and helps companies scale from 7 to 10 figures, which is extremely different. We usually have very 6 figures, 5 figures, even 4-figure business owners on the podcast. However, this is something a little bit different. So I think we have an amazing episode for you guys today. So Vicky Woo, I'd love to hear your introduction and give the people a little of your backstory.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I always love sharing the marketing I've learned over the years. And one of the things that I have found in working with entrepreneurs and working with Fortune 500 companies, you go into American Airlines and their marketing department takes up more than a full floor of their high-rise building. They have literally people whose job is pretty much not much more than running one single report. Most of us entrepreneurs don't have that kind of depth to our, capability on our team. And so I love bringing that knowledge that I've gained over the years to entrepreneurs who don't have that same level of access. So I'm really excited to share with your audience today too.
Thank you so much. And I think they're going to be extremely excited to hear from you today. So I'm going to dive right into some nitty gritty, test your experience a little bit. Now, you said you've worked with as a CMO for Fortune 500 companies, and now you also currently run your own marketing firm. As people listening to this who have to do their own marketing, you've been in-house and you've also been the outsourced version. And as you know, we run a VA company, so we are outsourced. So I'd like to know, what do you think owners should do when it comes to hiring for marketing? Do you feel like in-house is always better? Do you feel like there are truly some obviously really great marketing companies out there? What is a direction you would recommend having experience from both sides of the coin?
One thing I always recommend, we all know when we go to Google and we search anything, you get 38 million results. And which one's right, which one's accurate, which one's up to date and current with best practices that work for my business. And what we all tend to do is it's so much overwhelming information that I'm not even going to bother. So I always tell entrepreneurs, start anything. Marketing, a large part of it is about consistency. So even if you don't know the exact thing right to do now, start with whatever you do know, and then over time, get that knowledge and add on to it and add new strategies. The other piece I see is that as entrepreneurs start adding those strategies, they'll take, a course online from a coach. And sometimes those coaches only have that one specific way to do it. Maybe that's all they've been trained in. And then the entrepreneur needs new skills and adding a new thing to their marketing mix. And then they go to another coach and they do it with completely different systems. And before long, you find that you're working more because you're having to duplicate work in multiple systems. And so one of the things I always caution against is that there's more than one thing to do anything. There's 90 ways to skin a cat, like they say. I don't know why you'd want to skin a cat, but just because you learned it that way, and that's the easiest way to do is start some system and have some type of process, doesn't mean that it's going to be the one that works forever. One of the things I like to point out, since you do VA outsourcing, a lot of entrepreneurs kind of pick the wrong point to start with their first VA. And it's giving them responsibilities that really the entrepreneur should be keeping at that point.
Mhm.
And it's often at the point before the entrepreneur has kind of developed their own processes that then they can delegate to a VA, because the whole point of delegating to a VA is you not having to micromanage it. And if you
Absolutely.
haven't gone through that process and developing your strategies, you're going to have a hard time handing it over.
Mhm.
So sometimes you have to actually bring in a strategist first to help you get that down before you hire the VA to do all those ongoing pieces. But I am a fan of VAs. They will take so much workload off you. I always say, I used to do all of my own marketing. You know, I started out solo entrepreneur, just like everybody else.
Right.
And so I was doing all my client, my clients' marketing and my own marketing. And the best thing I ever did was hand over my social media marketing to my team, my
Mm.
own VAs and specialists that outsource. And that freed up so much of my time, and they're doing a great job. And I wish I had done it sooner.
Mhm.
So it's kind of, start anywhere, learn as you need to go, and really determine at what point having your time freed up would be a
Mhm.
benefit to your business for you to focus on. Like I always say for entrepreneurs, there's a zone of genius that only
Mhm.
you can fill,
Right.
and you need the time to fill that. So you're probably going to want to bring on a VA much earlier than maybe you would have thought,
Mhm.
and bring on someone to help, that may be helping with marketing. In my case, I help primarily entrepreneurs develop the strategy so that they know what they need done, so that they can bring on a VA to do it, or outsource if it's the right project to my team. And I also help them develop, we go through a branding process for clients who need that service.
Mhm.
And it's not just about having a logo and some colors, but it's really developing the voice of your business and how you're going to communicate, and what that sounds like and what that looks like. Because it's only at that point that you can give over your social media to a team to do
Mhm.
without having to micromanage them, without having to write the post yourself. So, kind of working along the road to, there's a big difference between the strategies that you do at 5 and 6 figures a year
Right.
and the processes and things you need in place to be able to get you to 7 and 8 figures a year.
Mm.
So
Okay.
I answered your question with way more information than you wanted, I think. But
No, completely understandable. Now, you've had 30 plus experience in the marketing industry, and I'm sure, especially over the past 8 years, you've seen so many drastic changes in regards to how we take social media. And I always say, social media being the newest form of marketing, it's really taken marketing from, I would say, like the big box company, if you will, in order to have, like, I don't know necessarily how it worked in order to get on TV or radio commercials back in the day, but now it's allowed for the mom and pop shops to be able to get some form of attention for, at some point, sometimes pennies on the dollar. What have you seen that stayed the same? What have you seen that stayed the same in regards to marketing going through its up and downs and trends? What are some things that you still see that are true, that are time and true tested and will probably stay time and true tested?
one of the things is marketing funnel. We hear that term a lot. Sometimes newer entrepreneurs don't understand, how do I make my marketing funnel? But in reality, it's your sales process. And long before we had even computers,
Mm.
people were doing sales.
Right.
They just did it differently. Maybe they had, index cards or a binder filled with information, and they would put dates on their calendar when to follow up with a client. They did it very old school, but the fact that it was a sales process, that it needed follow up, that they needed ways to nurture their relationship, that's all the same.
Mm.
What we've switched to is, we had a period of time where the new technology at the time, like social media,
Mm.
was kind of cookie cutter. And so we went from a transition to, very personalized one-on-one selling, because that's the only way it could be done. Transition to more of a cookie cutter online approach for a while. And now the online part is going back to a more personalized approach.
Right.
But the underlying piece of it has all been the same all along. What I tell entrepreneurs who aren't sure about a marketing funnel is that you need to think about micro conversions. We focus so much on that a funnel has to be a specific thing and work on a specific platform. You have, say, an ad that drives someone to a landing page, and then the landing page drives them to,
for the people that don't
now.
know, just give me a small brief of what the micro conversions are for the people that don't know.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
We tend to have learned that a funnel is a very specific thing with specific points. Where a lot of entrepreneurs miss is what we call your macro conversion, or just your conversion. Most people know that that's the point that you sell, that someone gives you money in exchange for your product or service. There are all these small points along the way, though, that help you get your customer there. Part of that may be a formalized marketing funnel that you've set up through whatever systems you have. But there's other pieces that entrepreneurs don't always stop and think about.
Right. I
go into, anytime I'm trying to set up, say I am going to sell a new ebook, even if it's like a $7 ebook, those are great things to get people into your list, or a free ebook. That's great too. But it's not just me posting it and them getting into the list and them getting the delivery of it. There may be a place on my website where I have a button on a different post, a post that's talking about something related, and I have a button there. It may be as simple as talking on social media and getting engagement related to that topic. Those are micro conversions. Anytime we can get a prospect, someone in our wider audience, to engage with our business at any level, deepens their relationship with us, and then helps take them along the road to conversion. So really simple things would be on your website having an email sign up form so they can get on your email list. It might be something as simple as a learn more button. You're not directly selling, you're giving them an opportunity to learn more about whatever it is. It could be, if you have a blog article, having some related articles at the bottom with links where they can go read more about that topic. All of those types of things are micro conversions. Each thing is something getting that audience member to connect with you more, to keep them on your website longer, to have them ask you questions or give you comments and start a conversation. You don't want to pass up those places. And most first built marketing funnels, kind of formalized funnels, are missing those smaller touch points along the way. So that's an important piece. It is a piece that it used to be there through the personal face-to-face selling before we were all online.
Right.
And it's a piece that we need to make sure that we build out into our marketing funnels now. But really the basics of marketing, of selling, of advertising, the basic fundamental concepts have not really changed a lot over the years. It's just now we have so much more capability to gather data, to really streamline our targeting of the audience we want to talk to. So technology has made the job easier in a lot of ways to make it more efficient. But the fundamentals really are still, they've always been the same.
Right. Okay. That's absolutely, that's good to know, because a lot of people, like we said, they're doing their own marketing. They don't have that 30+ years of experience. And with all of the trends and TikTok and the video being like big now, understanding where the focus of marketing should be, which is, as you had said, that coming back to that one-to-one aspect, and really each increasing engagement, so that each person, every time they interact with your brand or business, really has, as you said, a step closer to either becoming a macro conversion or someone that can refer someone if they're not necessarily in the market yet. Now, over the course of, I'd say, the past 50 years, we've seen a large shift in how the actual industry and the people in the industry have changed. I'm a big fan of Mad Men. I saw the show. So the Mad Men agencies of like the 70s, 80s kind of thing, totally different than what we see marketers doing today. What got you into marketing when you were first going about? Because I don't think it was necessarily as sexy, if you will. It definitely wasn't really a remote thing. It was very mundane. And for some people, I've heard that, it took something that they loved, whether it be art, drawing, photography. We actually had someone on the show who worked in a film room, like the dark rooms, doing the photography for marketing. And it just, because it was a job, was so different. So what really pushed you into marketing, and then what kept you in marketing for 30 years?
One of the things when I was going through high school,
Mhm.
I had been an artist all along. You can
For
actually
those that
see
can't see in the background, she has so many
I have
paintings. They're
a lot of
beautiful.
artwork. I have a lot of artwork behind me.
Or did you make those?
These are all mine. Yes.
Oh,
The
wow.
whole wall is filled with them. And yeah, I need to slow down maybe on my painting. It's one of my hobbies that, I sell them on the side, but I love and enjoy marketing also. So I do both. So I had been an artist all along. I also loved writing, just,
Mm.
short stories. And I remember at one point, I was probably maybe 8 or 9 years old, very young. I got into this phase where I would take a piece of paper and I would like design a um like an amusement park. It was shortly after we had gone to Disney when I was little.
Mhm.
And I would come back and I would like design this amusement park and I would make these rides. And so I'd draw one that looked like a tomato, and this one would look like, I don't know, a pumpkin. It would have a theme, like that one maybe fruits or vegetables. And I would give each ride its own cute, catchy name. And I was designing these really elaborate amusement parks. I wish I had kept all of those. I could probably like sell the plans to those or something now. But I didn't realize at the time that I was I was doing marketing, I was doing branding, I was, doing design work. As I got into high school, I was involved with the yearbook. I became the editor of the yearbook my last year and did a lot of those design and copywriting pieces were part of that. In addition to, we always sold ads as
Mm.
part of that process. So I found a way that I could combine those two things I liked into one field. And then my first job after I got out of high school, I went into the workforce first and then completed college after I had been working for a few years.
Mm.
So my first job was actually at the local newspaper selling advertising. So I would sell the ads and I would design them and copyright for them, and did that and enjoyed it. And so I looked for every new opportunity to expand. Advertising is just one piece of marketing.
Right.
So from there, I looked for ways I could expand further into marketing, where it was really the encompassing piece where you were doing all of the different pieces of marketing, and just enjoyed it and kept doing it. And even in some of my nonprofit work, I was doing the marketing and fundraising piece of it. So it was still related to a cause I liked, but also doing the career I liked. And it fascinates me. My other choice was going to be psychology because
Wow. Oh, wow. That's vastly different.
but the psychology of why people buy,
Mm.
why they click on this button and not that button, why they respond to this copy and not that copy. Those psychological pieces really interest me as well. And digging into the data, now that we have all this data from it being digital, digging into the data and looking at, okay, which button did they click? And then I can look at the buttons and, okay, let's figure out why they clicked this one so that we can replicate it. So that was always kind of fascinating as well. And so this really just covers several areas that I enjoyed when I was young.
Wow. So even when you were young as an artist, you've always been kind of into marketing and everything like that.
Yeah, I
So
didn't know it at the time, but that's what I was doing.
I see a lot of paintings, as we had talked about. You have a lot of paintings in the background and everything. Is that something that you take to this day in terms of like relaxation? Like, would you consider yourself an artist? And do you do like, I guess, commission work in regards to like for requests or anything? Like, is it, you said it was a side hustle. Give me some more details.
Yes. So my side hustle, probably about 19 years ago, was ballroom dancing. I loved ballroom dancing since I would watch Fred and Ginger, the old movies of Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers dancing. And I had danced all through, growing up through school and everything. And I got into ballroom dancing and was I loved dancing. And I found that I was really good at teaching people who had zero dance experience. And so I started teaching mainly brides and grooms.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes one of the two didn't even want to be there. But being able to teach them how to dance for their wedding, and then it's a skill that they can keep after that to, go on dates, go on date night, go to dinner, and then go find a place to dance. And so I really enjoyed that and loved doing it. It was my primary form of exercise. And then the pandemic hit. We moved and the pandemic hit. So I had to close the studio because of the move and couldn't then reopen anything where I am now because of the pandemic.
Right.
And so during that time, I found a new exercise. It's virtual reality, which is
do you have
a
an
new
Oculus?
topic new topic in marketing is virtual reality.
No, complete shift. I'm sorry, game changer. Oh my God. I discovered virtual reality over the pandemic as well. The best thing. I actually bought it because I use this app called Immersed for like working in VR with multiple screens and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And they have like workout. They have like you can go into an actual space. I meet other people. I actually now have a colleague that I talk to on a semi-regular basis, if you will, because we met in VR. We've talked about doing business. We're gonna bring them on the podcast and everything. Oh my gosh, what are you playing in VR? What is your experience? Are you gonna get the new Quest Pro?
All right, let me answer those really quick in 1 second. So I couldn't do my main hobby anymore during the pandemic. And so I went back to my other hobby, which is art. And I sell my originals on the side. I sell prints. I sell what I call functional art, shirts and mugs and things with my artwork on it. And yes, I do commissions also. So yes, during the pandemic also, I still needed to work out and I needed to do it in my house. And I had already been dabbling in VR. I'm an early adopter of all technology. I almost have to be because of marketing.
Right.
So my husband bought himself the Oculus Quest and used it one time and never touched it again. So I thought, well, I'm gonna, I'm into this stuff already. So I picked it up, started using it. I found I've done quite a few. I've been in the, immerse piece too. I found Supernatural, which is a workout in VR.
Right,
and so
right, I have it.
I subscribe to that and I do it not as often as I should right now since I just got over being ill, but I've already set up a VR expo for some of the clients I work with. We're building it out, but you can put on your VR
and go. I've been to a trade
and go
show
into it. And yes, yeah.
Oh my gosh. We had signed up. I want to say it was over the summer. The colleague that I was telling you about that I had met in VR, he's even more into VR than I am, and he connected with someone who is getting early into the VR marketing space. They do marketing and stuff like that, and so they are starting like virtual trade shows for tech companies to be able to showcase their stuff. And I recently had went to one where they had it's a San Francisco company and they're doing like the automatic robot delivery, like where it's like this little small pizza thing. It has like a warmer in it and everything, and it like drops
rolls
it off,
up
like,
to you.
rolls up to your house, drops off
I've
the
seen
food
those,
and everything. And I was like, this is amazing. They had like a 3D model you can move and everything. And from a marketing standpoint, because we want to keep this in entrepreneur land, from a marketing standpoint, do you see companies adopting to Web3 fast, or do you see them slowly adopting as they've done with like social media and TikTok? Or do you feel that they learned their lesson in Web2 and Web3, they're going to start moving fast? Because I've already started seeing some people talking about Web3 marketing.
Well, it's again goes back to what we talked about when you were first introducing me. The big companies that have deep pockets and a huge staff or can pay to outsource that level of skill needed, like to develop your own VR activities, will be able to adopt it fast. The small entrepreneurs who aren't there yet are going to have to find more creative ways to start adopting it, which is one of the reasons I offered the VR expo I was doing. It was no cost to my clients. It was simple, basic, have their logo, have a video, have, you know, a couple of objects you could interact with. One of them has a podcast, so you could click to play the podcast. Very basic, but I wanted to start introducing them to the possibility in VR. And so I did that to help them just start thinking about it, because most entrepreneurs, like I said, they don't have the technical skill required to build all that and do it themselves. This was through a third-party platform that any entrepreneur out there can use. It's called Frame, to do your own things. I actually now host once a month. We host a very casual virtual meeting, and people can join from their desktop. They don't have to have VR goggles, which is the great piece about this. They can join from their desktop and they get the 2D version of it, or they can join from their VR goggles and experience the 3D version of it. But it's just a casual meeting where entrepreneurs come together and network and talk about marketing activities they could do for the next month. Bounce around ideas, think of, you know, oh, I see, you know, such and such holidays next month. Anybody have ideas? And just casually interact, because a lot of these entrepreneurs need to get used to VR and see it. Some haven't even ever explored into it to see to even be able to think of the possibilities.
Right.
So I think, like most things, the big companies will be able to adopt it quickly, and a lot of them are already having plans on how to do that in a way that makes sense. But for the smaller entrepreneurs, the cost involved will be a barrier unless they find more of these companies that are coming out now that undertake the development piece of it, so that entrepreneurs are able to join that and not need all that deep technology knowledge and things like that.
Okay. Okay, that definitely makes sense. As we're on the topic of like these fancy companies and things, a quick round of rapid fire questions. The very first brand that made an impression on you, go.
Ever? Oh, probably Disney. Has to be Disney.
What about Disney was attracting to you as a brand?
It attracted me when I was a child, of course, because of, we all know why Disney is fun for kids. I mean, I don't even need to go into that. But once I started looking at it from a different perspective, you know, I told you I started designing these little entertainment parks. And as I got older and I started noticing, they have their Disney Training Institute for companies, for entrepreneurs, that has some excellent training. And through that, I got to learn more about how they do some of their things. And everything as small as the name badges on each of the staff at the park. It'll say like the languages they speak. So if you're coming to Disney and, you know, you're going to visit Disney in France and you're not fluent in French, you can find someone who speaks English. So really, over the years, just looking at how well they do branding and how deep it goes into their company culture has really been an eye-opening experience. And so that's the kind of things I look at now, where I am in my career now, is why are they doing it? How are they doing it? What makes sense for, smaller entrepreneurs to replicate
Mm-hmm.
to meet their vision and culture and goals.
Okay. Next one. What brand right now do you currently love?
For me, that's a hard one because there's so many, because I pay attention to all of that myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
There's one that's
yeah.
got to stick out. That's like, oh, that I love what that team is doing.
Recently, Patagonia. I don't know
They
if you've,
have a very, very cult following kind of thing.
yes, and they're very focused on, community giving back. And recently, if you haven't seen the news, the founder and CEO
Mm-hmm.
has decided to shift it because he's getting older. And at some point, you have to look at your succession planning.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've decided to switch their whole core really into where all of the proceeds will now be funneling into a nonprofit. And
I think I
that
heard about
just
that. Yeah.
really ties into the vision and mission he has had all along.
Mm-hmm.
And starting out, people were telling him, "Oh, you'll never be successful that way." But if you believe in it and you do all the other pieces right that you need to, and you don't vary from that mission, entrepreneurs tend to overthink it and rethink it. And if they hear somebody say, well, you can't do it that way, oh, maybe I can't. And they like drop. But you should never drop your main vision and mission. You may need to change what it looks like as it's producing and how you get there. But in his case, he never dropped that vision. And even now, as he's looking at succession planning, his end of career, coming, possibly his end of life at some point, death and taxes, we all face that. He's still staying true to that. And I think that's just amazing and wonderful, and something we don't see often enough.
I do agree with that. I did recently hear about them doing that, and a couple of other companies. I think there was a green company recently that is doing carbon neutral stuff that recently just decided all of their profits are going to go into a nonprofit that's for reducing, I think, like the greenhouse emission gases within the ozone and stuff like that. But okay, definitely understandable. Now, we've gone through a lot of things. We've talked about some stories. I wanted to hear two different points, and I'd like to ask the marketers this because we never know what happens, right? We like to think that we take data, we're going to make an analysis of that data and then put out a piece of content that we think based on that data what works. What is a piece of content that you put out that you were so confident was going to do well and it didn't go well? And then what was something that you were like, I don't know, just going to get it out, and it was amazing?
I'll start with the unexpected, amazing one first. There was a video, one of my own videos. We're not talking clients here because sometimes they have even more access to marketing budget than I do for my own personal company. I'm still growing. Most of my clients, I have two sets of clients. Some of them are bigger and they're ready to have a marketing department, but they don't have one yet. And so we work on getting that all set up, getting everything running, and then at some point helping them hire in the team they need. And then I have the entrepreneurs who need help doing it themselves, or maybe doing it themselves with some help from the team. So for my own, I put out a random video one time on something related to, this was when I was doing ballroom dance. So something related to that. It was not a planned, a carefully planned, well, here's going to be my script and here's exactly what my goal is for this video. It was just an off the cuff video. And didn't even pay attention to the video. I just did it. I uploaded it to my YouTube along with other ones I had been doing for my dance business. And I go back in a couple months later, and it had over 500,000 views.
Oh my gosh.
And I was just flabbergasted. I was like, where did this come from? And my clients, my students had picked up over that time, but I do a lot of organic marketing. And so sometimes it takes longer to build. And then when it does, it starts snowballing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't think much of the increased, traffic. It was expected because I had been working at it consistently.
Mm-hmm.
But then I just happened to look and I'm like, how did this video get over 500,000 views? And so we all worry when we do video, and video is great for your marketing. If you're not doing it, just do it. Do something. Do it on Facebook, do it on YouTube, do something. Don't be afraid of it. Mm-hmm. Because you don't have to have something super flashy and polished and all of these transitions and all of those other things.
Right.
You don't have to have it. You just have to be yourself and be authentic.
Which is so crazy coming from production TV being the primary mode where it's like, it's got to be crystal clear, perfect first time. So very much a different mindset. Continue.
Very much so. And I worked in that field too. So very different mindset, but not so much when you think reality TV, although they do still edit that, and they edit it carefully. But that concept is closer to what we should be doing on our, especially an entrepreneur, the face of the business. Just do it. Times that I've, over 30 years, there's been more than one time that you work and with the client and you're hammering out this thing that should be perfect, and it just kind of falls a little bit flatter than you expected it to. There's a lot of reasons that happens, which is what I'll talk about, because that lack of performance can often kind of turn an entrepreneur off from doing something again. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's just timing. I talked to a client who had come to me, and she started her business, her in-person business, right before COVID hit. And she had all these plans laid out for all these things she was going to do, and suddenly needed to pivot online because she had quit her job. She had gone all in. Mm-hmm. So sometimes there's just timing and things, external factors that influence that you can't really always mitigate. I mean, you can think of 5,000 things that can go wrong, and it'll be number 5,001 that happens. Sometimes it's something like you didn't pay attention to your audience enough. Mm-hmm. And we all do that, at least to some point, because we have our own internal biases and likes and dislikes. And it is a very easy, especially a lot of the entrepreneurs I work with that are, they are the face of their business. Mm-hmm. And they're still kind of holding that like their baby. And it tends that you put your own bias on it. And I mean, it just happens. We're all human. The bigger companies don't do that because they've got 500 people doing the marketing. It's a team effort. It's not any one person having a bias.
It's multiple minds in that setting versus just me thinking my own hypotheses.
Right. So, an example, a client wanted it was a graphic to use as an online ad on someone else's website. Okay. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, I want this and this and this. And I want the button, the same color, the same color scheme, but, at the bottom left. And so I'm like, well, that's how you have to word things very carefully. And so this is not exactly how I worded it, but I was like, that may be how you like it, but that's not what your audience needs.
Right.
First of all, the call to action button needs to be a different color, something that stands out against all the other colors. What exact color that is depends on a lot of things. And I also said the button also needs to be upper right, because another thing that hasn't changed with marketing over the years, when they used to be, it was only print like newspapers and magazines. And now when it's websites, top right is where our eyes go first.
For the deals and the sign-ins, that's where we can be conditioned.
Yeah, just how our eyes track things. Top right, even though, interestingly, in the US and a lot of other countries, we read from left to right, mm-hmm. but our eyes still go to the top right first. before coming down to the left. So sometimes it's just that as hard as you were trying, you weren't considering the audience as much as you thought you were.
Mm.
And then sometimes maybe the vehicle you chose was the wrong one. You know, you chose a pay-per-click ad, and it would have worked better as an email. And I think back to my very first full-time job at the newspaper doing advertising. Mm-hmm. One of my clients who I stayed in, she was one of my accounts. She wasn't my client then. I was working for them. One of my accounts, and I stayed in contact with her for years, even after I'd moved and I was long on to other jobs. But she came in and she's like, oh, I have this specific thing I want to do. And I don't remember exactly what it was now, all this time later. And we were talking and I said, you know, this is not going to work as well in the newspaper as it would on television, because it needed the moving visuals.
Gotcha.
And I said, you know, I hate to tell you, I worked on commission. So, you know, and I told her, I'm like, I hate to tell you, don't use us for this. But I'm like, you're going to get a lot better results if you use television and do a television ad for this. But she also loved the honesty. And that's what made her and I so close as colleagues through the years. She trusted me. So sometimes the vehicle you choose may not be the right one. Mm-hmm. And as entrepreneurs, we do something and it fails. You know, the goals weren't reachable. Maybe the goals were unrealistic. That's another problem. It didn't hit the goal we wanted. And so we're like, well, I'm never doing that again. Instead, you should look at it and look at the data and find out where and why and how did it not hit what it was supposed to? Where did it go wrong? Because that's how you learn to improve. Mm. And then from there, you make whatever it is better and better. That incremental improvement, it's a concept huge in software. We're constantly getting software updates, and we hold back from doing that sometimes as entrepreneurs. We think it has to be perfect before we put it out. And it doesn't. It has to be viable and functional. But it's okay to change it and perfect it over time.
I do agree. And over time is, I think, the hardest part for a lot of entrepreneurs, because we don't really know how long that time is. And for us, especially people that go all in, it can be very anxious and scary. You might have family, you might have, social pressures. It can be very, very nerve-wracking. Now, in terms of like this entire scheme of marketing, we as owners do so much more. So I'm sure marketing is like one of your favorite parts of running the business. What is it that you don't like to do? And how do you get that done? Do you hire? Do you just plow through it?
Yes, I have this whole huge list. I use ClickUp as a project management tool. If you haven't checked into it, it's good to use. And I could geek out all day just on telling you how I have it connected to all my other systems.
Oh my, no. You can geek out. This is a safe space. I love that kind of stuff. If you're a Zapier user, I'm sure, because you just said that. I was going to get into a little bit of like product and usage and stuff in a little bit, but continue.
Anything that I needed done that I couldn't get to short term, it goes into my dump list. You should always have a dump list, whether it's on paper, whether it's just, a Microsoft Word document, whatever it is, all these things you need to do and ideas that aren't critical to today, you need to offload them from your brain. I had this huge dump list, and it might just be something as simple as a minor update needed on my website. I do websites, so I do my own website. But again, if I'm working in my zone of genius, me spending that time isn't where my time needs to be spent.
Right.
So I just have all these little things that needed done. Reports, my own reports that had not been updated, like of, impact and goals and results and all those. I update my clients, but I don't update my own. because I'd rather get theirs done. Just small little things like that that needed tweaked, improved, that incremental improvement
Right.
that I just didn't have time to get to. And it's not that I don't like doing it. If it's something you hate doing and it's not your zone of genius, you definitely need to find a VA. But these were just things that weren't as important with my zone of genius at this time. And so I'm offloading. I have outsourced people on my team. None of my team are full-time staff
Right.
that have their own specialties, that help with client projects, website, SEO, all of those pieces. But I never had a VA just for me to support me. And that's one of the, so after I outsourced my social media to my social media team, I got a VA to help me, operational support.
Right.
One of the best things I've ever done. Just all those little things that, and it's not even, a lot of them I don't even hate doing. It's just that it's not a priority for me right now to do that. And so she has a huge list and she's just working through it.
I have a dump list too. Listen, it's one of the best things, at least for me, because on those days where you're kind of foggy or it could be a slow day and you might have gotten a lot done the day before, because we just have those days where we're in the zone, we are just moving, and so it might be a light day and I use my dump list in order to say, hey, this is something that I can probably kind of work on now, or maybe I can start giving this particular thought a little bit more noodling, which is a word I got from another client. But yeah, so you mentioned ClickUp. I am a software geek as well. I'm using Notion. We have Zoom. I use Camo, which is actually my phone, so as like the camera. We use Zoho instead of ClickUp for our project management because it connects with like our CRM and all that kind of stuff. But what does your stack look like? As what kind of tech are you using to run your business?
One of the things that I always recommend to my clients is use the least amount possible. I had one client that, like I said, a lot of the clients of larger businesses come to me at the point where they really need an in-house team, but they don't have one.
Right.
And what happens in a lot of those cases is they've got all these different systems, and a lot of them are overlapping each other.
Right.
And that's just, you're paying too much for one thing because you're paying for that one and you're paying for that one, and they both have some of the same capabilities. But it also makes it harder because you may have to do like double entry. Well, if I add something over here, then I need to add it over there, even if you have Zapier, which is great. And if this, then that is also great. But it just, they have too many systems in place. So I always recommend the fewest ones possible. So of course I have Office 365.
You're Microsoft over Google.
Only because since I have to use all the Microsoft applications because my clients use them. And so I stuck with Outlook for my email as well. Although my side gig uses Google because it doesn't matter. I'm not working with the same type of clients. Yeah. So I have that. I have a CRM that handles the prospecting and submitting proposals and quotes and contracts and invoicing and all of the automation. Huge fan of automation that connects to that. And
which CRM system are you using?
I used one that's really made specifically for creatives, although other people can use it also. It's called Dubsado.
Oh, that's a good one. Yes, I have actually another writer that I know that does copywriting uses Dubsado.
Yes, and I've over the years with all of my clients and the businesses I worked for, I've used, I think, almost all of them out there. I had a client who used Zoho, so I've used that one. I use Salesforce, which can be a real nightmare if you don't know what you're doing. But when I looked at my own needs, I'm like, I'm still a small organization. I need the automation piece without having to pay. Like I looked at HubSpot, which can be a great free option if you're small, but to get the level of automations I wanted, I was going to have to pay like $500 a month. And I'm like, nope. So I needed unlimited automations that if I email someone a proposal, they can look, they can accept the proposal. It automatically generates a contract. It automatically generates an invoice. It automatically gives them the welcome message, the onboarding emails. All of those pieces are automated because there's one of me, there's now one plus a VA that are working on the operational side of my business. I have that then, depending upon the project, connect to ClickUp for my project management. So something as complicated with as many moving parts as a website, it creates the project and populates out like the basics of everything that needs to be done.
Right.
An SEO client, it'll trigger all of those pieces, and ClickUp, then I have all these automations set up in ClickUp to automate all of that. For content, which sometimes is tied to an SEO package and sometimes it's just content, there's a whole writing process that has many manual pieces in it, but the rest of it's automated, including once it has been posted to the website, how it's curated, how it's recurated, maybe 3-6 months later. All of these pieces automated in ClickUp, which I use a paid plan of ClickUp so that I can track time when I need to, and not even for clients. Most of mine are project based, but for my own internal purpose. If all my team, I want to be able to know this one client that has one small project a month, exactly how much time is it taking us?
Right.
Because if it's taking 10 hours and I've only budgeted for 5 and that's what their package is built on, there's a gap there that is costing me money. So I pay for the paid version for the timekeeping aspect, but even the free version of a project management like ClickUp, and it was my favorite. Again, I've used a lot of those. I've used Asana and Trello and many of those. ClickUp's my favorite.
Okay.
Beyond that, I use the Adobe suite of products, of course, because of what I'm doing. And I use some things that are really geared towards different client needs.
Okay.
And those vary so much based on the client. But anything Adobe suite, Google Analytics
weird
suite.
question. As a full artist, I'd consider you a full artist that also has graphic design skills, very, very good at what you do. What are your thoughts on Canva?
It is good if all you're doing is social media, online things like ebooks. At the point, and again, I talk a lot with brands that are moving from 6 figures, 100,000 or more, 100,000, 200,000 a year, to 7 figures, which is $1 million. Somewhere in that process, they usually find that they need professional printing. And at that point, Canva doesn't get it done. Okay. It's just the way the file has to be set up for commercial printers. Sometimes they can take the file you make in Canva and rework it to work there. But at that point, commercial printing is different than what we print off of our printers on home and what we post online. And there's all these technicalities, trapping and bleed and trim and things that you probably don't know as an entrepreneur. So at that point, or like if you need embroidery, or if you're going to get shirts and you need embroidery, the file has to be set up a certain way and the lines can't be too thin because they can't embroider it. So if you're just small, you use that as you're starting out. Adobe actually has a similar one. It's called Adobe Spark. It'll do video or it will do graphics. And that's the one I tend to use because it coordinates with all my other Adobe things. But yeah, like I said, if you're starting out, do anything, use Canva. But at some point on the road to growing your business to a larger, more robust business with more moving parts, and you need professional printing, you're going to need something like Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop to do EPS. Something a little bit more technical.
Okay. So it seems like you have a lot going. We've talked about a lot in this conversation. And so before we have to officially get you out and everything, we always like to end on like some kind of very I guess, insightful kind of question. And so sometimes it's standard, sometimes it's something that I kind of think about throughout the conversation. I thought about something very unique to this conversation, and I think very unique to you. I noticed, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it looks like your style is water painting.
No, it is actually all acrylic. I hate
Oh.
watercolor.
I
I don't
was
hate
so
it.
wrong.
So when I did watercolor, first of all, I had artists in my family. So I
Mm,
grew up with my grandpa, my aunt that were already artists. But when I took art classes way back in middle school and high school, and you always had to do watercolor, and I just suck at it. I'm not even gonna lie. I am not a watercolor friend. But these are all, and before I say that, I primarily back then did colored pencil
mhm,
and very realism. Like I
mhm.
have some of my other pictures that are much older. I'm only 28. I don't know how they're so old, but just kidding. But like there's a tiger and it looks like a tiger. What I've done during the pandemic when I switched from ballroom dancing to painting
Mhm.
is I wanted to try different styles, and where before my art would take me months to finish. I mean, imagine drawing each hair of a tiger with a pencil. It took
Right.
months to finish. I'm like, I want to see how fast I can get one done.
Mhm.
And so my whole like art genre has changed, but they are acrylic on canvas. But it's
Mm.
interesting that they look like watercolor because I hate watercolor.
No, from here it looked like a little, but acrylic makes sense as well. I also don't know that much. I just am going based on what I've probably seen in like museums and stuff. But you from between acrylic painting, uh is that I believe was me for a second. Very weird. My phone's on DN. Oh, it's my mom. That's why I'm sorry. So between acrylic painting, between ballroom dancing, and all of these different things that you're doing, how would you say that shapes how you do marketing specifically?
Well, definitely the fine art background gives me a different perspective than a marketer who does not have the art and design background.
Right.
One of the other things I see is so my approach is holistic. We look at everything going on, even if I'm only doing one service for a client, say social media management. They don't want to do their social media anymore. They want someone to do it for them. I still look at the other pieces of the business because you can't do marketing in a silo. And what I do see sometimes is people that don't have the design background, or they have design and they don't have the marketing background, or they have those two and they don't have the tech background,
Mm.
tend to focus like, they say that if your only tool is a hammer, then everything you see will be a nail because that's all you
Mm.
can do is
Right.
hammer it. And having those different pieces in my background really brings a whole different perspective because I know that, I have some people that obsess over what does the website look like? And I'm not saying you shouldn't obsess over it. I have a whole article about the real design mistakes that actually, will decrease your conversions and your traffic. But for the most part, what your website looks like is not one of those unless it's painful to your eye. But they get so obsessed on, oh, well, that needs to be moved up 1 millimeter. And I'm like, that is not going to impact a conversion.
Right.
Your website for most entrepreneurs is one of their primary selling vehicles. And I'm like, if you obsess over move it to the left 1 millimeter, that's not going to drive a conversion. Move the button to the top right and have it a color that is eye-catching will increase your conversions. But being able to look at things holistically is really interesting. And I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't have the art background, if
Mm.
I didn't have the tech geek side of me and didn't have the marketing experience. So for me, it all fits together, but it brings a more holistic approach and outlook than it would have otherwise.
Wow, it's been absolutely amazing talking with you. And I think the audience is going to have so much to listen to. This is going to be an episode that you guys want to play back. Vicky, it's been absolutely amazing to have you. Now, before we officially have to get you out of here, shameless plug, where can we find you on social media? Where can we find your website? How can people get in contact you if they feel that they absolutely loved what you were doing and might want to work with you? Where can they go?
One great place, since we know people already like podcasts, is on your favorite podcast platform, search for Your Marketing Department. Because when you need help with your marketing, you ask your marketing department. So my podcast is called Your Marketing Department. Search for that, and you should find a whole list of episodes that share this kind of great information. And I talk to entrepreneurs also about how they've started their business and what struggles they've gone through on the way and how they've overcome them. So some of that great startup kind of information as well. On social media, on almost all social media platforms, you can just search Vicky Woo Marketing. And in case you spelled it wrong, because neither of my names are spelled the way you think, it's Vicky for Vicky and WU for Woo, Vicky Woo Marketing. And you'll find me on almost any of the social media platforms. I am more active on a few of them than others, but you'll still be able to get in contact with me. And my website is vickywoo.marketing. So if you go there, you can find my blog is full of information. I have a chat bubble icon in the bottom right where if you have a specific question, you can ask it and I'll probably answer you directly and give you some resources that you can find and figure out what you need to do.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today, Vicky. Ramblers, it has been another amazing episode. Do not forget, keep rambling. Hey, Ramblers, that's it. Podcast is over. Don't leave yet, though. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast, and follow us on YouTube at OffSource HQ. We'll see you next time.